right, here we go. Mastermind meeting. So we got Jennifer, we got Steve. Good to see you guys. All right. Perfect. Okay, cool. Yeah, so we've got a pretty good topic for today. We're going to be talking about some ops and some client success, keeping things simple while also preparing for growth, right? One of the biggest things is obviously trying to get as many clients as we want, as we can, front end, right? Marketing and sales, but it's still important to keep that back end in mind for two things, right? Which we'll talk about is like structural growth, making sure the company can hold and sustain itself without falling apart. So that comes from simple processes. And then we have financial growth, which is being able to retain clients, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But yeah, just gonna keep the lobby open here for a few people to come in, and then as always, we'll open up some Q&A at the end for you guys. And as I'm going through as well, because I like to prepare these documents. I like to be rather organized. As I'm going through the documents, just feel free to ask questions on anything that you guys want. And like I said, sometimes I lose the chat. I don't know where it goes because I use a pretty big screen. So if at any point I'm not seeing your question, just feel free to unmute and let me know. But other than that, we'll go ahead and get started. Perfect. Good to see you, Monica. Good to see you, Claudia. All right. Perfect. So I know I've got a few of you with your videos on. Can you just give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen? Should be a Google Doc, says simple operations. Perfect. Thank you guys. All right. So again, when it comes to building the agency, right, we want you to focus on revenue generating activities. Very, very important because you don't want to get stuck in sort of this hamster wheel process of where you're just kind of running in circles, right? You're not really actually going anywhere. You want to be able to focus on getting new clients because what's important is bringing in revenue. And then from there, having good back end to sustain that and then grow, right? And we'll talk about that here in just a second. Like I said, when we first started, you have structural growth and you have financial growth. So biggest thing here is just about having clarity, and you don't have to by any means be an expert, right? You don't have to know everything that's going on in your business and every single piece in place. You want to think about it like a control room, right? You want to be able to know all the buttons, what they do, where they are, but you have an engineer to come in and press the buttons for you, which comes down to having fulfillment partners, contractors, etc. So, but again, it's all about having that clarity, because if you guys think about it, there's anxiety and there's stress, right? Anxiety comes from the lack of clarity, right? The unknown and not feeling in control. And so when we think about an example of anxiety, it's from, like, for example, the future. If you think too far into the future, you don't know what exactly is going to happen. Of course, we'll try to control it. We'll try to do our best, but it's still unknown. The only thing that we really do know is that eventually we will pass. We just don't know when, where, how. So if we think about that too much, we start to feel anxiety. Now, stress comes from knowing that you're in control, but not being decisive or not taking action, right? That's where stress comes from. And I think a really good example of this is for those of us that have gone to college or gone to school in any some way, shape, or form. We always know what's going on. We know the test is coming up. We know projects. We know homework is due. And what do? We procrastinate until the day of. And then that's where stress comes in. That's a perfect example of stress because you know exactly what needs to be done. You know how to do it and you can do it. You're just not doing it. So two differentiators there is anxiety and stress, and we want to avoid them both. And that's coming from, again, getting some clarity on what that back end process will look like. So I'm going to cover the philosophies that we have when it comes to ops, so operations of a company, and then the client success system. And then I'll go into how to actually start building it out for you guys specifically as the agency owner. Now, again, keep in mind, I'm not by any means wanting you to focus all of your effort on the back end because you want to focus on revenue generating activities. But if you can do this in parallel or simultaneously, that's exactly what you want to do. Okay. And over time, you will build on this too. And I'll talk about that here in just a second. So, again, two things that I talked about, and just want to review this as well for those of you that joined a little bit after, was two important things for a winning client success department is structural growth. So the process of keeping things simple so you can not only just fulfill on your services by your contractors, but so that way nothing falls apart, right? You want to be able to have and maintain a good structure and a good foundation. And that comes from, again, simple processes for structural growth. The second thing is financial growth, right? Is retaining the clients that you bring on, which is very important. Not only just obviously for like financial growth of the company, but also for valuation of the company. Now, I don't know, I don't think we've had any conversations in this with you guys here on this call specifically, but if you ever thought about selling the agency in the future, obviously growing it, having revenue, having clients, and eventually selling it for, a good exit, that is what helps is the financial growth, right? And typically having contracts, so longer term contracts also increase the value of a company. You might have an agency making $100,000 a month, but their clients are all month to month, right? Meaning that a client can leave at any time, and then you can have another agency doing $50,000 a month, so half of what they're doing, but all their contracts are 3, 6, 12-month agreements. That $50,000 a month agency is worth more than the 100K, even though they're making more month to month. Because everybody, I mean, the business could be gone tomorrow. Like everybody could just get up and leave. So that's what that looks like, right? And another example of financial growth is, for example, if we're making $10,000 a month, right? But you spend that $10,000 a month every single month, you might be making the amount of money of like the top 13% in America, but you're living paycheck to paycheck. So even though you're top 13% in income and revenue that you're making, because you're spending at and you're not having any sort of reserve, you're still living paycheck to paycheck. Same thing with your agency. You could be making 10, 20, $50,000 a month, but if you're not retaining that revenue, you're going to constantly be focused and stressed about trying to get new clients, and you're never going to have that reserve or anything building up, right? So every month you're starting from zero if you're not retaining clients, essentially. But if you can retain them, you're starting from, let's say 20,000 in the first month, and then next month you bring on more clients and you retain them, so now you're at 20,000 per month, and then you retain them, and 30. It just keeps growing and scaling, right? So any questions on this high level?
Yes. Do you have any recommendations on percentages? Because I know like when you get the clients coming in and you have is there like any documents on like when you get employees and you have like expenses and stuff, is there like a certain percentage, like a sweet spot percentage where for how much you want to keep in liquid cash, how much you want to spend on contractors, employees, like running the company expenses, how much reserves you want, and how much money you want for, I guess, like new acquisitions, you want to hire like more staff, and you want to make sure you have money on hand for more staff to expand, and advertising money. Is there like certain percentages you should shoot for?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So we have a pretty good, and this is both in the CEO and accelerator curriculums. It's in module 5. Where am I at?
Okay.
There we go. So in module 5, we do have a breakdown of tracking revenue and expenses made simple. So in this calculator, essentially what it'll do is it'll give you ideal percentages that you want to aim for. Now, every business has a season, right? When you're scaling or when you're first starting out, sometimes you're going to be spending more in different areas, but this kind of gives you an ideal of what you want to aim for. So usually you want to go for probably 45 to 55% profit margin. But again, this is when you're what's the word I'm looking, when you're efficiently running, when your business is efficiently running. Because when you're first starting out, you're going to spend more on marketing, trying to acquire new clients. And then when you're scaling, same thing, you're typically going to spend more on marketing. But these are just some examples of numbers. So like overhead, and I go over it more in depth in this video, but you want to have like 5% on overhead, which is like softwares, merchant processor fees. You have 25% on marketing, which is for us purely ad spend. Like it's just marketing budget. What are we spending on? 25%. Labor is what you were asking about, which is like contractors. And then
Yeah.
once you start paying yourself, we put ourselves in executives pay. And then other expenses is just anything that is not absolutely necessary for the business to run. So like, if you put your rent or travel, food, right? Things like masterminds too, professional development is masterminds. You can put that in other because you don't, like, the business doesn't need it to run. Does that make sense? So these are some
Yeah.
ideas of percentages and numbers. But again, it really depends on you as the owner, and again, what season of your business you're in. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I have another question. Are there like any advantages to like when you start getting the revenue of paying yourself the salary or just leaving the money in there and just taking it out as you need it? Are there any like tax like benefit like advantages like doing it either sort of way? Like would it be better to just like take money out as I need it, or like be signed up as a salary as an employee and take a salary, or just take out as little as possible and just take it out as I need it? Like what would be the recommended method that would work best
Yeah,
probably?
that's a great question. I am not a professional, like I'm not a professional accounting expert, so I think it'll depend on you, and then also having a conversation with someone who's a professional. I'm lacking the name of an individual, CPA, maybe something like that. Yeah, someone who can help you like plan out the accounting and the numbers, because you could do it either way. When we first started, we were doing it kind of like that, like just bare minimum. What can we take out? Because we wanted to keep as much money into the business as we could. Because there were, when we first started making $20,000 a month, we were young, and of course, like we started going to the dealerships and we're like, look at all these nice rides. Like, what can we do? But we understood that in order to really grow something, because that was the vision for our agency, we wanted to grow it into something large, just like where we're at now. So we decided to continue putting money back and just taking out the bare minimum. But yeah, it really just depends on you. Yeah, and obviously how big your vision. Like, there's a lot of factors that go into that. But I would definitely like consider your vision, what you have for the agency, and then speak to a professional like a CPA and kind of plan that out to see what it looks like.
Okay, and you did say I'm putting this. I'm writing the note down. You said module 4 is where the information is, right? Module 4, you said
Module 5.
5. I'm sorry. Okay, module 5.
Yeah,
So I'm
module 5.
making a note of it so I could watch it later because I'll probably try to like look into that like later on, like read, like watch the video.
Yeah, for sure. And in the beginning, it's very simple. Like you're just really going to be spending on softwares like Go High Level, and well, that might be maybe a couple of other ones. I'm just blanking right now. But then you also marketing, like ad spend, obviously is going to be your biggest expense, and then contractors too. But contractors are only paid when you land a client. So your
Yeah, so they don't
expenses,
really count. They're not really towards. Yeah, so contractors don't really go towards your budget, I think, because like if you're not paying them until you get money, then they don't really even count. I don't think really
right?
much.
No, I would still count them in a. So this is like a budget sheet, an expense tracker. So I would still put them in
Mhm.
here, of course, because they are part of your expenses. So basically, again, when you watch that video, you'll see it. Basically, you just want to know how much money is coming in and how much money is going out at any point in time, so what the numbers are, again, for clarity, to know what's going on. So I would still put them in
Gotcha.
here. That might be more of like a variable cost, because it varies until you get a client.
Oh yeah, and from my experience, just let you know from my experience, because I'm kind of like I try to always find ways around stuff. So from my experience of doing this, I've found like software that works, and mostly all the stuff I use, I've been able to get it completely free, almost everything, like all the software. Even like when it came to like the document signing stuff, I
Yeah.
scoured the internet, and I was like, let me. Most of the stuff I found was like just trials, and then I found something that's like completely free that works. So most of the stuff, there's always alternatives to things. So even if you're on a budget, there's like so much free software to run everything. Like almost everything is free.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, and if anybody wants to wonder about that, I mean, would you be open to people just kind of hitting you up and asking about what softwares?
Oh yeah, let
Yeah.
ask people to hit me up, because I found a free DocuSign alternative on the internet. I found it. It works. It does the same exact thing, and it's like there's no cost. It's not even a trial. It's just free for a certain amount.
Yeah.
I think you could do like 25 signings a month. I think for completely free. I believe.
Yeah.
So if you're starting off like 25 signings, like that's a lot per month, and you get it for free.
For sure.
So I'm using that. I'm using like I for Calendly for the tracking, I signed up to like to to connect to Calendly directly with Facebook, but I found out it was completely unnecessary. I did 120 hours for the year, but afterwards I found out that it's completely unnecessary because you can actually do the tracking for completely free. So next year I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to like do the tracking for free. And you don't. And the other thing is, people, even the media buyers, they ask you to get a developer, the media buyers. You don't need a developer to do tracking on Facebook. There's actually a way to do it where you just click stuff and you literally don't have to code at all. And I know how to code a little bit, and I've had to use very little code, even though I know how to code. So
Yeah.
like you don't need developers for almost anything. Like you could do almost everything by yourself, even if you don't know code that much. There's like
Right.
no point.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. There's definitely, like, if you want to be resourceful, even in the beginning when we first started out too, we did the same thing. So Google Drive was our main source of organization. We didn't use a project management software. For scheduling calls, we used, I think, Schedule Once, which is OneHub, which allows you to have one free user every month. And then obviously as the team grows, you have to upgrade. Calendly as well can be free. And there's a few other things that you can use
Yeah,
that are free or low cost
I
too.
try. I do mystery shopping as well, and I track my mystery shopping expenses on my iPhone. I use Notepad to track my expenses, and
There you go.
I do my own taxes. I write them off of my taxes, and I track it on Notepad on my iPhone. Doesn't
Yeah.
cost a penny.
There you go. Yeah, definitely being resourceful. And Monica, I know you unmuted. Did you want to add something there?
Oh, I was just listening. I agree. I was listening earlier about or unmuted during the pay yourself
Oh,
and the coding of your expenses. One thing I would add, just having ran my business that is already up and running prior to this one,
right.
is that I kind of reserve 30% is
Mhm.
kind of my number that I try to reserve. And I do pay myself, but I've gradually and adjusted my salary depending on what's happening in the business, with
Right.
ebbs and flows. But one thing I would say is it's nice to break them down separately. The thing that I love to do every year at the end of the year is I go back and look at my sales and profitability by category. So I know what services are giving me the most value, like most profit. So what's the least output with the most profitability? And that's how I kind of run my services at my other business year over year. But you want to kind of have that divide in there, Jordan, because you're going to want to see what is your profitability and markup and margin on certain things. And you've got to know what you've got to count against that. So that's why it's important to track the things that cost against it.
Do
That's all.
do do you? Do you use any kind of software for like payroll? Do you use payroll software? Because I do, like I was doing I was working as a uh I was doing like some, it was kind of sort of freelance type stuff. And the stuff I was doing, I was a virtual assistant for a bit, and they were paying us. They were using a software called Wingspan, I think it's called, and they would just allow you to take the taxes out of your money because you were like paid as a contractor, but they allowed you to sign up to the software. I think it was called Wingspan, and you could like get your taxes taken out of your check by yourself. You have to sign up for it, and it just does the payroll for you. And even though you're a contractor, it would take the taxes out of your money when you're getting paid.
I use QuickBooks and have for a lot of years,
Oh,
and
QuickBooks.
that
Okay.
does our payroll for us, and it just keeps
Okay.
it simple, and it automatically goes to the government, and I don't have to deal with all that stuff really. So that's why I use it, to stay in line and, you know, not get out of line.
And I have another question for you, Monica, because I'm glad you're on the phone. I wanted to know, do you have any advice for like closing high ticket people? Because I got on a call today and I found there was a 40K a month client that was talking to me. And the first thing he asked me was, what are your numbers? Like he immediately wanted to talk to me about figures. Like as soon as I got on the phone, like I wasn't used to that. He was like, how much is the cost? He didn't want to even hear about how things work. He told me, he was like, I don't know how things work. I just pay for lead generation. He told me he wanted nothing to know. He didn't want to know about any technical stuff. He said, I don't know how lead generation works. I just got all, he said, I have $300,000 coming in and I just want to get the leads out and I don't know how stuff works. He said, how much does your program cost? And I told him, and he's like, that's doable. And he was like the first person that was like, didn't care about the numbers. And then he was like, you know, I got $300,000 coming in. I want to talk with you next week and I want to like set it up. And I told him we could like sign the, you know, fill out the onboarding and then sign the contract, you know, later when he has the money, I could work out a payment structure and stuff. I told him what it was. And he said, it's fine. That he said he has enough money. He doesn't really care about the numbers. Just tell him how much it is pretty much. And I was kind of in shock. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all in how you approach it. For me and my team, depending on what we're selling, it could vary in pricing. And sometimes it's a $50,000 contract. Sometimes it's a $5,000 contract. I've found if they're conscientious about money, if you break it down, kind of like the deal I signed, my first deal for this one, it was a $5,500 deal. And then I sold him three $5,500 deals. So then it became a $16,000 deal. And then I said, let's lock it in for the year, 4 quarters. So it became a 60 grand deal. And so I think it's really how you approach it. And if they're price conscious and you go in with a big dollar amount and they don't know the value and they don't care because they don't have the attention span, you're going to lose them and you may lose the deal. But you've got to build the value for them in it. And you can do that sometimes in stair stepping how you're pitching it and what you're selling and telling them they're going to receive. So that would be my advice for you. I think
that's helpful.
The more confident you are, I was listening to something earlier and I tell my teams, like, I do leasing training and sales training for apartment communities, but I tell the teams all the time, the person walks through the door and they're here because they already know that they want to rent an apartment, right? They didn't just stop by. You're not driving by and be like, oh, I'm just going to go check out apartments today. You know, you're going to be looking for an apartment or a car, or you're looking for digital services. And so they've done their homework a little bit. The knowledge is out there today on the internet. Shoppers don't shop like they used to, you know, and when they want digital products, they're buying, but they've already done their homework. And so they kind of know, or they don't know at all. And so either way, you've got to educate and build that value for them. And that's how you kind of get, stair step them up depending on what they're wanting. The other thing I would caution people to, and I don't know, Christian, what your guys' advice is on this, but like, for me, I know in the apartment industry, the marketing bill is the last bill to get paid. They're going to pay the power bill and the mortgage and the payroll and everything before they pay marketing. And so I have in my businesses where you have to pay up front. I don't do work and you get billed. I don't do that. I make them pay everything up front. Work does not commence until you pay. When payments received.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because otherwise you could have a lot of bad debt you're trying to collect and you turn into a collection agency, and that super sucks because that's not what you want to be. And I've had to do that. And when I even sometimes make exceptions for a recurring client or, you know, an old family friend or whatever, sometimes I still get into a pickle with them. So just be conscious of that, guys, of not letting somebody, you know, it's great if somebody wants to pay you $300,000 or $40,000, but it's not great when they don't pay up. So you got to be conscientious and aware on your payment due dates and things like that.
I had a lawyer, I had an attorney look through my contract, and I have it set up in a way that services will stop when payments stop. So it wouldn't
Yeah.
continue. I put it in my contract. I had a lawyer go through it. I paid a lawyer to go through my contract.
Yeah.
So that's what I did, because I know that's always a concern, because I'm very, very careful with money. Like I run my business. Like I have other stuff that I do, and I use credit cards, but I don't hold debt. I make sure that I pay everything off, and I don't have any interest on anything. I have like 10 credit cards and no interest on none of them. So I'm very careful.
Yeah. It's
But
just clients will not, and especially in marketing, they want to throw spaghetti at the wall. They want immediate traction. So they're like, increase my ad spend to $4,000. And you're like, okay. And before you know it, they owe you 16 grand. And you're like, hold up, buddy. Nah. So you just got to be careful there.
oh, that's very helpful. So that's gonna help me out, because I want to be more prepared for the call. I started getting traffic like right away, doing the ads like from link. I got the call, by the way, that's the high ticket person, was from LinkedIn, like you. So
Mhm.
LinkedIn is getting the high ticket stuff. I was like, wow, this really works. Because today it was on a whim. I just called the guy, and he answered immediately, and he was like, yeah, I'm interested. How much you charge? Let's talk numbers. Like, I got money to spend. I got 300K to spend. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, right off the bat, and I was like, this guy really wants it. And he was like, I'm going to talk to you next week. I got his information. He was like, we're going to talk next week. We're going to set something. I was like, okay. And one of my clients was, I got a referral, a bunch of, LinkedIn is really good. LinkedIn really got me some good stuff.
Yeah, don't
So,
take it to the bank until you hear them. I have clients all the time
yeah.
on the housing side that tell me, I've got $100,000 in marketing left to spend before the end of the year. And I'm like, great, because your occupancy sucks. Let's spend it. And then I give them 15 ways to spend it. And they're like,
Oh,
oh, just
gosh.
kidding. I can't pull the cord. The higher ups aren't going to let me. I can't, we have to have savings, this, that, and the other. So don't take it to the bank before you get it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's also a tip.
yeah, I'm not gonna count it until I get it. I'm kind of happy that I'm getting the leads, but yeah, I'm not gonna count any kind of high ticket stuff until it goes through. I'm gonna pretend like
Yeah.
it's not
Get
there
it inked.
until I get it.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
at least I got the traffic coming in, so that's good.
Yeah, make sure that you're sending in the recordings too of those conversations, and our team can also take a look, whether it be Zeror or somebody on the sales team as well.
Oh,
And then they can take a
I've
look.
I've sent some stuff on Slack, Christian, and I put you on it because like my calls that were recorded, I sent it to you and Zarar, and I wanted you to review it because I had a client talking to me, and he kind of critiqued me like, I've done some kind of sales stuff, but never marketing. My first time doing marketing, I've done some sales. I have like one IT client for my business that I run like separately from this, and I've done sales stuff, but this is like a different kind of thing. So I've never done marketing before. So
Right.
getting on the calls, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of trying to wing it a bit, like with the calls. I didn't want to do a script because I wanted to sound like me. So I
Yeah.
kind of just speak to the people like I'm talking to you. And
Right.
Do you know what sells people? Confidence.
yeah, that's why I don't want to script. I want to be myself. So I talk to them like how I'm talking to everybody else. I don't even rehearse anything. I just come there with them. I have the material set up, like I said, client folders. I have sort of like an itinerary. I set up folders. I put down notes of what I want to tell them. I made a website that has case studies on it, a case studies website I made. Then I speak to them, I ask them questions or whatever, and I try to make it like a casual conversation. I never try to like, I don't try to sound like a robot. I want to sound like how I sound. So that's what I try to do.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, and even the script that we have in the curriculum is not like first of all, we don't even like the word script. I'm sure you've heard us say that because we don't. Because the idea is then people in a script they feel like they need that to read off of it, and that does the opposite, right? Which is what you're talking about. You want to be natural. You want to come on confident. So for those of you that are hearing this, you want to make sure you understand the script and the philosophy of it, like what it actually is doing. So like asking the questions, why we're asking certain questions to understand the pain, but don't read off of it, right? Because you're not supposed to. You want to have a natural conversation, bring that confidence. But I think that's really good. Yeah, this is and there's something else I was gonna add, but I forgot. But I know we've got two hands raised. I know J and J. I think your guys' hand came up first. You guys have a question?
You
You guys are
guys are on
still,
mute.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
still muted.
You're muted.
I lowered my hand. How do you want us to actually be recording these calls? Because I've just been going at the fly and making
Yeah.
it happen, but I'm not recording anything. And in order for us to share it, how do you want?
Yes. So Zoom
Do,
Zoom
do,
is
do,
really great. Go ahead.
do you want me?
Chris?
Do you want me to send you something I use? Because there's a software that my success manager told me to use, and it's really good. I've been using it. It's called Fandom, I think it is Fandom. I could send you a link
Fathom.
for that.
Yeah, Fathom is really good.
The
Fathom
Fathom
is
Note
good.
Taker or our Zoom account that we paid for,
No, we're talking about like,
you know, to
Or even-
record.
You can
will lead
record on
you.
Zoom. I record
Yeah.
my calls on Zoom all the time,
And
or
then
even
just send you
videos
the
I
link of
publish.
that. And then send you the link of that call, Christian.
When
Sorry.
you close the
Yes, yeah.
meeting, Zoom will condense it and then you can grab it and send it into the chat.
Yes. So Zoom is ideal, of course. And then you also have, because it is also free, up to like an hour long call. So if you see yourself taking longer calls, and I think it like upgrades like $10 or $15 a month, it can be. And then Fathom is the one that I dropped in the chat, Fathom. And you can take a look at that one as well. Fathom it records, and it's also a note taker, and even it's AI, so it's listening to your conversation and it can pinpoint certain topics within that call. So Fathom, we use that inside of our own internal meetings, which is really great. And then you'll see sometimes when, like, for example, Chris or Kyle, right, agency advisors hop into these mastermind meetings, there's a Fathom that comes with them. It's just their note taker. But yes, Fathom, Zoom, and if anyone else has using anything else could work.
I was wondering about that Fathom one. So can I send them to be taking notes and recording you guys? So when I'm washing dishes with the kids and I can hear it later at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. You
Let's see
can,
Otis or whatever every once in a while show up or whatever.
yeah, you'll set the setting in there to join your calls, and even if you don't join the call, it can still hop into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I don't have to wait a week for your video. Yeah, I
Yeah,
can hear it like
exactly.
at night.
It would
Sweet.
sync into your calendar, and then every call that you have, it just pops in, regardless of you joining or not.
Another note is Fathom links with Zoom. So I have Fathom linked to my Zoom. So it's
That too.
it's connected to my Zoom. So as soon as I go into a Zoom call, it asks me if I want to record, and it records all my calls automatically. So it links to it. So if you have Zoom, you can like connect it to your Zoom account, and it's connected to my Zoom. So whenever I'm on the Zoom call, it records stuff.
Yeah.
yeah, but what
Fathom is
about
good.
just phone calls? Because we've been doing a lot of the setting.
Mhm.
Just
That's what
on
I was
the
talking
phone,
about.
not
Yeah.
video calls.
For sure. I know you can
it
make phone
just-
calls. Zoom has a way to make phone calls and record them, I'm pretty sure. But our team uses what's called Alloware, which I don't remember the exact cost. I can look into it, but Alloware, which I'll drop it in the chat here in case you guys want to look at it. That one you can call and text, and it doesn't have to be your personal line either. So it kind of holds like this, barrier of kind of boundaries. So Alloware is great. You can call, text from there, records it. It's got a whole CRM for like calls specifically. You can leave notes as well. So that's what our setters use, and that's what I would recommend. So that is Alloware. And yeah, so Jennifer says if you're in Go High Level, you can also record calls because it's a CRM. So I believe you can call from Go High Level, I believe. Yeah, I think so. So quite a few different options here. And then Rifat, I know you have your hand raised. Do you have a question or want to hop in? Oh, you're still muted. Here, I can unmute you. I see you're driving. Be careful. Oh, never mind. I can just ask you to unmute. All right, that's not helpful.
Thank you. No, yeah, thank you. That helps. So question about case studies. Like we still haven't launched yet, but in terms of case studies, there's not much out there right now. Even on our website or our website. The case studies just don't seem very impactful. So what would you recommend in this case to make sure that we still show up as an authority, but we don't have case studies? And it seems like a lot of the white label companies that we're still interviewing seem like they don't have case studies in the niche, or they can't share because it's white labeled for other folks.
Interesting. What niche are you in?
So we're in real estate brokers and team leaders.
Interesting. Okay. And yeah, okay. So yeah, I mean, step number one obviously is like if you have an experience. If you don't have any experience, we always mention to lean on contractors. Now the contractors, I mean, I know one thing as you mentioned is that some of them don't have many in that specific niche, but in the ones that do have it branded, is that like they have it branded for other clients or logos or something like that? Is that what you were mentioning?
Well, so they're saying that they can't share the case studies for their white labeled, the folks that they have helped. So that's kind of, and we've come across that quite a bit, which was interesting. It's like, really? Like, why is that?
Go ahead, Jordan.
I'm not sure which one that you use, but I use I only checked actually with one fulfillment team, and that was Cans, and they were excellent. Like I had no problems with them. I met with them twice. They said you can use the case studies. And also, here's the thing, on my case studies page that I made, the site that I made, I put stuff that's not even in my niche, because the clients I don't think they really care necessarily if the results came from their particular niche, just the results are there. Like on my page, I have like I'm doing life insurance. I have one example of life insurance, and the other 2 case studies are like completely different stuff, like accounting and something else. And the important thing really for the clients is that they see the numbers. As if you even have like one in your particular niche, they care about the numbers, and it's okay to put like case studies that aren't in your niche on your page. Like what I made was I got like a GoDaddy site, and I just copy and pasted the case studies from them there to my page, and it's like a simple little page that I made up and to showcase people. So that's something you can do.
And
Yeah,
I
I
would
know.
offer, Rafat, that one, to answer your question as far as why those white label companies are so reluctant to give you anything is because of they're really hot. Those white label companies are really big on privacy, and they have signed NDAs with their clients. So they're, they're reluctant to, but they're actually by law, not allowed to divulge any of that information, which I understand. I'm in the same situation. It kind of sucks, but that's why. With our experience with cans, there hasn't been much in our particular niche. But I mean, you have to kind of like just kind of fake it till you make it. Do with what you have, and once we get there, then we start filling them in.
I have a
Yeah.
ton of real estate case studies, and I have a ton that are from me white labeling, but that we've just blanked out, like the name of who gave it to us and the organization. And depending on what you're wanting, if you want to shoot me a note, I'm happy to share some of those that you can repurpose and use. So I don't mind, because we're in real estate, same thing. So yeah. And I know we were
Awesome.
talking online, so we can connect. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Monica. I appreciate that. And thank you guys for all the input. And Jordan, that's interesting because, yeah, I mean, that was what was suggested. But I was like, if I was going out and looking, and like maybe, I don't know, I'm in the marketing space. So I was like,
Mhm.
I would want to see success in real estate.
Yeah,
You
same.
know,
No,
not,
it doesn't.
yeah.
It does. I was actually suggested to do it, and it hasn't been an issue. Like my success manager was saying, just put some case studies up there that the fulfillment team did, and I just put like one that was in my niche, one life insurance, and the other ones weren't. And to be honest, I haven't really. I've told people about it, and every client hasn't even asked to see it. Like I think I've showed the case studies to like one client. Most of the clients don't even really care about seeing the case studies, in my experience. They want to just talk about the numbers. They don't really ask to see it necessarily. I had one person that asked us that, I think looked at the case studies actually. So it's not really, I don't think it's really a big deal. They want to hear numbers. And then some people, if they have the money, like they don't even care about like the numbers aren't really a factor. They just want to hear about the results. Because on my call today, the guy was like, what is the money? He basically pretty much said, I don't care what it costs. Just what's the process? Well, he said he wanted the numbers, but he didn't really care about the technical process. Just how much is it? I have the money. Just give me results. That's it, pretty much. That's all he wanted to know.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And I think, it is a good point. I mean, obviously, if you're not finding case studies in your specific niche, if you can bring other ones, because remember, like when we started our agency, we focused and we did really well. Our bread and butter was e-com. And then we started to slowly expand into other niches. So we went horizontal versus vertical. And so when we started getting into these new niches, obviously our agency had never worked with them before. We did have some team members because that's when we started bringing on like in-house internal team. So they had maybe their own case studies, but even then, like we didn't have as much as we had in e-com. So it's just a matter of showing people that we understood marketing, because as long as you can market it and you understand that skill, then you can do it for pretty much every niche. Like once you understand like how funnels work, the top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, retargeting, like being able to set up those strategies, it's just a matter of tweaking that foundation of marketing skills for each niche, and then you launch it, right? So that's how we were able to do it, and it ultimately just comes down to the offer. If the offer is really catchy, but you will have people ask about case studies or like what you've done in the past, and you can always leverage your contracting team. So even though your agency and your specific brand is new, you can always leverage the team. And like our team has been around for X amount of years. They've got this much experience. Here's, about our team, because that's what we did as well, as we just leveraged who we were using in the beginning, right? So whether the contractor had spent X amount, made X amount, was getting X amount of leads for one client, it's just like our team is doing this, and this is who you've got in your corner, right? It's not just me Christian, the owner, it is the rest of my team, the rest of my specialists that are coming on. So that's a few ways to kind of also maneuver through, you know, if you don't have necessarily any case studies, and still hold that credibility and authority, because it's not just you, right? And I think sometimes people kind of get stuck in that. It's like, I don't have any experience in this niche. It's like, it's not just about you, it's also about the team behind you.
Well,
That makes
I
sense.
think no, yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, I think that's why I was saying like the contractors aren't able to share their case studies in real estate. So that's what I'm saying. But I mean, I guess that's fine. I mean, this gives me a little bit more to go off of. And I think that again, maybe it's just again a mindset block where I was thinking, well, if I was on my website or landing page and I don't see, you know, the case studies for real estate, but I'm seeing like other niches, they'd be like, okay,
I
you know,
think
but
like you do. Yeah. I'm the same mind.
yeah,
I'd be
so
like,
I,
nope. You
yeah,
can't do
so
my
that's why I was kind
marketing.
of hesitant. Yeah, I was kind of hesitant about that, but thank you. The input here was helpful. Thank you.
Love it. All right. Perfect. Any other, so this call actually turned into more of like a Q&A, which I love it. It's completely fine. It's completely fine. I like to go like that. So I guess for the rest of the time that we have here, I mean, does anybody have any questions along the lines of what we've been talking about before I try to go back to the main topic, or does anybody have any questions they wanna drop in? No? All good?
No. You just-
All right.
We're sorry, Christian, for hijacking your text here.
Completely fine. And this is also similar to what happened on Tuesday on the copywriting call with Gabe. If you guys weren't on there, by the way, make sure you're joining. That guy is insane. He's really, really good. But you know, it just turned into another conversation. But at the end of the day, as long as you guys here on the call are getting value, that's what I'm here for. That is my job, is to provide as much value as I can. So, all right, if no other questions, we'll try to finish up. You know, we've got about 20 minutes left. And again, at any point in time, just feel free to stop me and let me know if you have any questions, because I sometimes lose a chat once I start sharing my screen. But all right, so where was I? Yeah, so we were just finishing up on the first page. Great. We're talking about world-class client success, right? We're talking about structural growth, and we're talking about financial growth, right? So again, structural growth, just to recap and remind before we move on, is just having a simple process to make sure the business does not fall apart, right? Have good processes and they're simple, not too complex. And then financial growth is making sure that we can retain the clients that we have to, again, have money that we're starting over with every month. And again, the way I explain this is, you know, like for example, your first month, the first time you get a client, you started at 0, but then going into this next month, now you have that client's retainer. So now you're not starting from 0, you're starting at, for example, 3K per month. And then you're trying to work on getting new clients. And once you get new clients, the following month, it just continues to add up. And that's what retaining clients is. And that's why it's important. Otherwise, if all your clients are leaving after, you know, a month, you're starting at 0 every month and you are just living off of, like in this example here, like paycheck to paycheck, right? You're just stressed about trying to get the next client. All right. So we'll talk about the philosophy, like I said, and then we'll get into more like the how to design it for yourselves. So one thing, and this is a few things that we consider in our philosophies when it comes to designing client success. And the biggest thing here that you'll see and you'll learn the pattern is everything has to be done with intention and the understanding from your client's perspective, right? So number one, the important thing to do is think about this process from the perspective and the experience of your client. So what I mean by that is, like, for example, in the marketing, right? What are your ads saying? What ad did they come from? If you're able to track that or see that, like what ad did they come from? What messaging did they see? What is the offer? What opt-ins did they do? What was their experience in your marketing? And then once they went through your marketing, what was the sales process like? Who did they talk to? What were they told? What's their journey been like, right? How many calls have they been on? So you kind of understand what steps they've taken from your marketing to your sales. And then you can start thinking about onboarding. Like, how do I make that a smooth transition? Because the biggest thing here is making sure that it feels fluid and that they feel like they're in a flow, like there's no bumpy ride and everything's smooth for them. All right. Even though on your end it might be a little rough in the beginning because you're still starting to sort things out and you're still testing things out. For them, at least, try to make it as smooth of a transition as possible. So again, considering what they've already been through, talked to, what they've seen onto the onboarding is really important. And some of the ways that we make that onboarding super smooth is, number one, we celebritize the account managers, right? Because they've already been speaking to the closer, and the closer has a lot of authority and that credibility. They have a lot of trust because they built that relationship. And now they're going to hand them over to somebody completely brand new. And you want to be able to transfer that confidence over to that account manager. And so the way this happens is very simple. The closer would just obviously understand who the account manager is, what's their experience like, what kind of skills do they have, what is their main role, and celebritize that, like bump them up. Like, you know, for example, if your account manager that you happen to find has a lot of experience in marketing, You can say that you're going to be in great hands. You know, this account manager has X amount of experience in marketing. They really understand this part. You know, they're a great copywriter. They're really great at offers, whatever it may be. And so then they start to feel more confident about who they're getting transitioned or handed over to, right? And I know, Rifa, you raised your hand. I can't see you, but did you want to hop in? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay. No, maybe I should wait until after you're done. I realize it goes back to the case studies question. So I can wait until the end. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you here.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I don't want anybody to think that, you know, the Q&A was anything bad. I think it was great. And again, as long as you guys are getting value. But yeah, so you want to celebrate the account managers, number one, to make sure we hand over that confidence and that credibility and that authority. Another way that we make the transition smooth is we have a smooth handover, right? And for you guys, as you'll see inside of module 4, where we talk more about fulfillment, there's a couple of emails that go out. And again, this is just what we did. And keeping things simple. If you guys want to do something different, completely by all means, but it's just giving you a framework to start off in. So the handover from closer to account manager is 2 emails, right? Number one, the email is an introduction. The closer sends over an introduction email to the account manager and just them, one-on-one, says, hey, here's the client I'm about to onboard. Here's some details. Here's what I've talked about on my calls. Here's their goals. Here's where they are right now. And here's my call recordings with them if you want to look them over, right? Just having and giving them everything. And that's the first email. The second email is called the handover email, where it's the closer emailing the client with the account manager CC'd. And essentially that says, hey, client, here is the account manager. They'll be taking it over. You know, that's where you can essentially hype up the account managers, how great they are, and then always end with, you know, if you ever need anything, I'm here. I'm still here. But essentially that's the handover, right? So 2 emails, very smooth. But again, if you want to build on that, do something different, completely fine. You know, our team typically does now voice notes on top of the emails, which is very helpful. You know, just kind of explain the main core points versus somebody having to go through like, you know, 2 hours of calls. They can just give a voice clip that kind of summarizes the important things, like where they are, where they want to get to, what are some of the reasons that they really liked us, things like that, right? So smooth handover and notes. And then finally, congruent onboarding call. So again, very important that whatever they've seen in the ads, whatever they heard in the sales process is all on the onboarding call. And again, it feels smooth and it feels like everybody's in sync. I think that's really important, right? Because if the account manager, and I've done this before on some of our very first clients because I was very nervous on my calls, I started asking the very same questions that our closer had already asked. So it's like, all right, tell me about where you're at right now. It's like, but I just told your closer. And it's like, okay, tell me about your goals. Like, I just told your closer. So, you know, like, and that can seem very odd, and that can seem like nobody really cares, like you're not really listening to me, right? And it seems like your team's not in sync. But if you can position those questions a little bit better, which is what I learned, was, you know, if the closer already told me where they're at, it's like the close, you know, so I spoke with, you know, Jim, and Jim told me a little bit about like where you're at right now. And he told me you're trying to get to, you know, whatever, maybe $40,000 a month. You're currently at 5. And here's some of the notes that he exchanged with me. Tell me a little bit more about that. What do you know, tell me more specifics. So that's different, right? Basically what I wanted to ask was for him to expand on whatever it is that they had already talked about, but instead I had asked the question as if I'd never heard about it before. And that breaks rapport very quickly. But does that make sense on essentially having a very smooth handover from closer to account manager? Yeah, cool. All right. Number 2, right? Keeping the mental and the psychology of how people and their brains work is very important, right? Human psychology, which is something that Zora and I have spent many, many years on, and I still study to this day, is very important of just understanding human behavior, right? Before we got into marketing, I was studying psychology and law because I really wanted to become, whether it be a lawyer or judge or a police officer, just understanding how people think and why they do what they do. So psychology and sociology, right? But what's important here is in marketing and with managing people, with managing clients, you want to understand how people work and how they think. So this brings us to something that we've talked about before, which is the account manager model, right? And there's many agencies that don't use an account manager and they work. And there's pros and cons to pretty much everything. So an account manager has pros and cons where, you know, ideally that's somebody who is there to control communication and control the experience. And it allows the contractor to focus on their craft. The con to that is now, in theory, you have a barrier, right, between the client and the person that they can ask a question to. So in theory, there's a barrier because you have the account manager, which, you know, can slow down communication. They don't get, like, sometimes people think that they get watered down versions of answers, right? Because what, like, a Facebook ads expert tells the account manager, and then the account manager tells the client, maybe, like, if you guys ever played the game Telephone, sometimes it can get lost in transition. So that's the theory there. Again, pros and cons. Now, if you don't have an account manager, pro there is obviously the client gets direct access and communication to whoever that specialist is. The con there is now that specialist is playing two roles, right? They're trying to do their job and do their work, which is what they should focus on. And they're also communicating with clients. And as we know, sometimes clients, some of them need more communication than others, right? And the way we think about this is very similar to relationships. So if you don't have good communication, and you're not keeping like a good pulse within a relationship, you can imagine one person's going to start to feel like you're not really present, you don't really care, you're not listening, or the details. Because again, if there's no account manager there, then they're speaking to the specialist who's supposed to be doing the work. They can't communicate properly. Like they can't, properly break things down for the client the way that they should. They can't keep a good frequency of communication, if that makes sense. And you can imagine in a relationship that'll break the relationship. And same thing here from client to agency, it can break the relationship because they're not, getting consistent communication. It's not going to be detailed, right? Because the contractor is going to essentially be like, all right, here's your answer. Let me get back to my work. Here's your answer. Let me get back to my work. Like that's really how it goes. And that's what's happened in the past. So that's why we believe an account manager is important, because their sole focus is communication and is focusing on that experience, being able to frequently, respond when needed, being able to kind of keep a pulse on, if the client's starting to have, which we'll talk about here, if they're going through a valley, which means things are starting to get a little bit slow, you want to meet them there and kind of be proactive. I'll talk about that here in just a second. But again, very important is understanding how people think and how the brain works. And people just naturally need communication, right? They need to be spoken to. We are communicative animals, right? Humans. Now, number 3, one of the biggest leverage points is understanding the logistics, right? So the actual steps of the process of your fulfillment, and then breaking it down to what I just mentioned, which was peaks and valleys. So, and I'll talk about how this works is you basically just go to your contractor and you understand how it is they do what they do. So what do you need from me during the onboarding? And then how does your onboarding work? Now, once we've gotten onboarded, what does your process then look like to get everything set up? Like if we're running Facebook ads, for example, how much time do you need? What different things are you going to be doing? Can I have some expectations with my clients? So understanding the fulfillment of how the services are actually carried out is important. And then from there, right, once you have the logistics, you start to think about peaks and valleys. And a peak is essentially when a client is feeling a high, right? When they feel in flow, everything's going right, everything's exciting. And then a valley is essentially when things maybe are a little bit slower, or there needs to be some work done, right? Typically work is not always fun for everybody. So that's how we consider peaks and valleys. And you want to think about that with your own processes. So for example, with an agency, a peak might be during the onboarding call. Very exciting. The client's talking about their business. They're talking about their goals. They're talking about strategy, how we're going to execute and be able to get to where I want to get to. But then the valley comes during the setup period, which we've seen is a pattern, right? Because after the onboarding call, usually, and obviously you want to get the specifics from your contractor, but usually you can expect between a 1 to 2 week setup period between the onboarding call to actually get everything set up and ready to launch the Facebook ads, for example. So during that time, obviously it's a little slow. The client's not seeing anything because everything's getting set up. Their ad copy is getting creatives are being made, the funnel's being built out, things like that. So that's where you understand there's a valley and the client's typically going to experience a low. And the whole point of having peaks and valleys is to be proactive, right? Because remember, the reason we call this client success and not customer service is because customer service is more reactive. So what do you do on Amazon when you have a problem is you call them and you tell them that you have a problem and then they fix it. Versus client success, where we're proactive. We understand the process, we understand the journey and where you might have certain struggle points, and I'm going to meet you there before you even get there, right? And so a way you would kind of handle this is, which goes into step number 4 here, which is pre-frame the expectations, right? So on the onboarding call, after everything is super exciting or we're having a great conversation, you say, what's going to happen next is over the next, and always under promise and over deliver. So what I would do is I would say between 2 to 3 weeks, even though I know it's going to take 1 to 2, I'm going to say 2 to 3 weeks. It's going to be a little bit slow. The team's going to be creating, all these different things for you, and it's going to take some time. So it's going to be a little bit slow, and that's okay. Most clients, they experience that. And so what I'm going to do, which I don't usually do, but I'm going to go ahead and check in with you often. And as things come in and they get completed, I'm going to send it over to you to take a look at it. So even though I'm supposed to send everything over to you, towards the end when everything's ready, I'm going to send it over to you as it comes. And that's just a way of them feeling more comfortable and understanding what's next. Okay, I understand it's going to be slow, and these guys, they've got experience and they understand how it works, and okay, he's going to be checking with me, right? So that's just one way of understanding what the value is and then meeting them there proactively. So setting the expectation early, which is called the pre-frame, and then also adjusting your process for that, which sending over, like if you get the ad copy from the contractor, you read it over and say, okay, makes sense. Send it over to the client and say, what do you think? Let me get some feedback. Same thing with ad creative, same thing with funnels, the designs, whatever it may be, and just keeping that communication. Does that make sense on peaks and valleys and how to set up pre-frames around that or pre-setting expectations? Any questions? All right. Perfect. And I think this is, yeah, the last one here is, so once you're able to really map out the peaks and valleys, as you can start to build out personalized process around it, which is what I was just talking about, is understanding where the peak is, meeting the client there to really help them realize that they're experiencing a really great time in that process. And then the valley is preparing for it, like having something ready. So like I said, when you're setting everything up, it's a little slow. So let me meet you there and then try to help you like not be stuck in the valley, so to say. So for example, here with Launch My Agency, right? Because what we do, everything that we do is with intention. The way that we've designed the process, the calls, and the done for you services, like it's all done with intention. So for like our clients experience typically a peak when they're selecting their niche, because very similar to like an onboarding call with a client in an agency, they're considering all the different ways that they can help our particular industry or particular client. You're starting to consider pain points. What's their struggle? How can I help? You're thinking strategy, which can be exciting. Now, and that's really great, right? We want them to write that as long as we can. And then they start to hit a valley when it comes to doing the research, right? Research is not always fun. It's not really a sexy part. And so typically clients are just like, oh, man, this is like tedious. This is work. And it's normal. And so we want to meet them there by being more proactive, communicate more, helping them through that research, right? And helping them understand that this is what's crucial about running the business. Because obviously for you guys, as you know, because you guys have gone through a process, and I think all of you have already gone through or are finishing up your research part of niche and going into offer, is that understanding your niche with deep research helps you really understand the pain, which helps you design an offer that is truly irresistible. When you can solve a problem for someone and you can present it better than they can even describe it to you, they automatically assume that you have a solution. And that's why we spend so much time in research to really understand who our clients are. And then again, peaks and valleys comes from that same research, understanding the type of client that you're working with, and then being able to customize the process further for them. Does that make sense? Any questions here, peaks and valleys? No? Oh, Rifat, I think you're still on mute, but I see you. Oh, you're good. Okay. I thought you said you had a question. All right, cool. All right, so that's kind of the theory and the philosophies that we have around client success and building out these processes. Right now, when it comes to actually building out the one that you guys have as an agency. So here's what I'll do. I'll open this up. So an example of here is we built this, which I'm sure some of you have seen. This is built off of the idea and framework of understanding what steps you like a client needs to take from when they first join Launch My Agency to getting to where they really want to get to, which is like scaling, right? So as you can see, we go from like, helping you understand, like thinking through as a CEO, remembering that you don't need to do the work yourself, which I think a lot of agencies, and again, this is where the research comes in. We understand that most agencies try to do the work themselves. They try to like specialize in Facebook ads and Google ads, but realizing that you don't have to. You can be the business owner and have someone else and delegate it there. And then you want to be able to select your niche, right? Who are you going to be working with? Designing your irresistible offer. And I'm kind of running through these obviously because I'm sure you guys have seen this already or had it with your agency advisor. And then once you understand your offer and who you're working with, you create that world-class messaging to then put into your two strategies that we teach here, which is LinkedIn and Facebook. Once your marketing is set up, then we obviously have to understand the art of sales, right? Understanding these conversations, understand that we're not reading off a script, but we want to understand the philosophies and why we do what we do on the calls. And then once obviously you start landing clients, outsource and fulfillment. And then once we're landing clients and we're getting a steady flow, we now think about the structure of an agency and how to properly scale, right? So these are the steps of essentially a client with us. And so from an agency perspective, you want to think about what steps that your client needs to take from obviously when they first come on board to launching and eventually scaling their ads. And the way you get this is from speaking with your contractors, right? Very important. And so you just simple like this, you just start to outline the steps. Like here's first step, second step, third step. And the thing is that when you get it from your contractor, it's perfect because they're the ones doing the work. And so you can communicate that with confidence, especially if they've got a lot of experience behind them. So that's step number one, right? Is really outlining the steps that your clients will go through, which again, you will get it from your contractor. Learning the way that they're doing business and delivering, and then understanding how they fulfill, and very important, what they need from you, right? Because at the end of the day, like what you need to do is get them everything that they need and set them up for success so they can properly do their job and do their work. And it makes your life easier. It makes setting expectations a lot easier, right? So that was a high level, like if you think about our roadmap. And then what we've also created is a checklist. And this checklist here is for the things that need to get done and by who. Now, what this is referred to in the agency world and industry is called the scope of work. right? It just outlines all the work and the scope of it, like what's going to get done and when. So a really good example is, you could take something like this and create it into like onboarding process. Like what things do we need in the beginning? So for example, if you're running Facebook ads for a client, you're going to need Facebook Business Manager access. You're going to need access to their account to be able to run it. We need to add our team members, as many people as there are. We need a briefing of your business and understanding, your branding and understanding who your ideal client is as the client of the agency. Understanding who your ideal client is, very similar to the process that you guys went through with building an agency, right? So you want to understand your client's businesses. So things like that, right? Understanding the different steps that they'll need to take before launching and then also after launching. And as you can see, this one's broken down from niche and offer, marketing, sales. So it can get as detailed as you want. But that's essentially the way you can do it is you have a high level overview of steps of the journey. And then a specific scope of work is what we call it, of showcasing what's going to get done by who, what they can expect, just to give them clarity, right? And again, you build these two from connecting with your fulfillment team, right? And then obviously mapping it out, customizing it past its just groundwork. Because if you think about it, like this journey doc, which looks really great and it's presented, pretty well, it like the internal one that we have is not actually like this. Like it's more logical. It's like the client needs to do this and then this and then this, but you want to have something like that, which is higher overview for your clients, right? Does that make sense as far as speaking to your contractors, getting an understanding of how they fulfill and the logistics of their processes and what they need from you, and then from there building out your own process and designing it, mapping it out, and then setting these kind of stepping stones for clients. Any questions there? No? Good. Cool. All right. So once you have something like that, and again, very high overview, you want to start to then look at, like we talked about, peaks and valleys, right? Anticipating around that. When is a client going to feel a high and when are they going to feel a low? So like I said, with Launch My Agency, step number 2, which is the niche, that's typically a peak. And then you start to go into a valley when you go into step number 3, which is offer and messaging, like actually doing the research and crafting it into messaging. Unless you're a copywriter, you're not gonna have like, it's not gonna be like a smooth ride. So that's where, again, we can be proactive because our internal one has the outline like that, but then it even has, like, for us, showcasing when and how we can step in as agency advisors. We can step in and help, Jordan, if he's really struggling with his niche or research, I can step in and be like, okay, let me help you. Let's hop on a call. Let me do it with you. Let's walk through ideas. Let's start to, get you what you need, right? And so same thing with clients is during that period of getting everything set up between onboarding call and launching ads, it's a little bit slow. And so what you can do as the account manager or have your account manager do is step in with a call, or what I did back in the day was every day I would send a message for the first week. And then the second week I would start pushing it out every 2 days. And it could be something simple as, hey, just want to let you know, we're still working on the ad creatives that I mentioned yesterday. I'll get you an update, but they're looking good so far. Something simple like that. Even though I'm not actually giving them a new update, I'm still staying top of mind and, in essence, telling them something. And again, it's just keeping that pulse, right? Because if I don't talk to them for 2 weeks, they'd be like, where'd this guy go? This guy took my money, or what's going on? You know what I mean? Then same thing. Like, again, the philosophy here is just understanding the human psychology. So if you think about a relationship, I mean, J&J, I mean, if you guys don't hear from each other on a business trip for 2 weeks, I mean, what's going on here? Like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? Like, so you got to have that communication and stay top of mind with your clients. And again, just communicating like simple updates. Like, we're still working on this from yesterday. I'll get it to you when it's done. And eventually it will be done. And that's a perfect time to just give them that update. Like, here's the ad creatives. They're done. Let me get your feedback and I'll feed it back to the team. So simple things like that. And like I said, I would do it every day for the first week and then push it every 2 days, because you don't have to communicate every day, because then eventually you might be kind of like that annoying mosquito and the client's gonna be like, dude, just give me some space, because that's the opposite of what can happen in a relationship too. If you guys are all over each other all the time, it's gonna be like, all right, I need some space. I'm starting to get a little annoyed. So, and what we'll talk about here actually in number 4 is understanding your types of clients, right? And for us specifically, we've built out what's called ICPs, ideal client profiles. There's so many different names for this that you've probably heard. There's avatars, there's profiles, there's personas, like just understanding the different types of clients that you'll bring on, because that will also vary on the experience. Because for the most part, generally your process is pretty much outlined, right? You'll know the journey that a client needs to be on and take, but depending on that type of client will vary how they go through it, right? How you communicate certain things. Because the way I communicate with one person, I could say the same exact thing, but just in a different way to someone else, and they both receive it well. But obviously, if I say the one thing to person A, and I say it the exact same way to person B, there might be 2 different personalities, and they might take it in a completely different way. But again, it's all in like, I'm just saying the same thing, but just different people take it differently. So Again, building out these ideal client profiles and personas is really important. And so when we think about how we've designed it, we've broken it down to 4. You could do more, you could do less, you could name them differently, whatever it may be. But these are the ones that we've broken it down to, right? So executor, and I'm starting from the bottom and you'll see why. So executor is the ideal client, right? When you think of like ideal client, and sometimes when I review some of your guys' worksheets, because the agency advisors bring them to me and they ask me for your feedback, a lot of times when you're filling out those worksheets that says ideal client worksheet, they typically say the same thing. I want someone who understands and trusts that I am the professional or my agency is the professional. I want them to trust the process, things like that. That is what's called an executor, right? And typically it's a client who is not super hands-on. They're not controlling. They're engaged in the process. So they'll give you feedback. There's a difference between giving feedback and then someone being controlling. So if they're giving feedback and then just following your direction, like they trust your judgment and your process, that is an executor, but that's also 10% of the clients you're going to get. So not a big portion, but it's the ideal, right? An executor, someone who just, you tell them what to do and they just execute. Then you have people who are fear driven, right? Driven by fear and they constantly question things. And whatever it may be, right? This could be past trauma. This could be like past experiences with an agency or whatever it may be. But they're just constantly like just scared. So therefore they procrastinate from fear. That's where stress comes from, right? Is understanding what needs to do, what needs to be done, what needs to happen, but not doing it. So they're fear-driven, just constantly questioning and just always worried, right? You tell them, here's the strategy we're going to roll with. And they're like, are you sure? What if this happens? What if that happens? And again, understanding how to communicate with that client is going to be really good. Then you have a follower. And this is pretty much the opposite of fear-driven. However, it's an extreme because the follower just does what you say. They just listen. But the problem here is that they're not really thinking. Like they're not really understanding what's going on. They're not really thinking from, especially as a business owner, and they're just going with whatever you say, let's do it. And again, they're not really engaged. And what typically happens, what you'll see here, is they're very quick to point fingers. And so you want to be proactive against that. Because again, if somebody's just like following everything that you say and they literally never have any sort of input, never have any questions, you want to be able to stop that pretty early and ask them to engage. Because eventually when they get down the line, if, for example, and we know this with marketing, you'll test out an offer, you'll test out an ad, whatever it may be, and it doesn't work, the simple process is you have to come back to the drawing board and try again. Because at the end of the day, like what we as marketers think is going to work, it has to be tested with the market because the market is who actually decides. So with the follower, it's very easy for them to say, you know what, it's not working, it's all your fault. And then you run into a problem there. So you want to make sure that you include certain touch points in your process to handle that early, right? And then last but not least is a micro leader. And typically another word for this is like micromanager. So sometimes they come off as an executor because they're kind of, they're like very engaged and they're very going along with it, but they're very micro. And we were just talking to, I don't know if you guys know who Adam is. Adam is also in Launch My Agency. He's working with restaurant owners, and he had a really good point in understanding how they think. Is restaurant owners are so overwhelmed with the amount of data and things that they're managing in a restaurant. Like they have to know their profit and margin down to salt shakers, pepper, and understanding what's behind the bar, weighing the amount of alcohol, weighing the amount of food in the kitchen. Like they're just overwhelmed with how much they need to know and understand. Like their P&L sheets are usually 4 pages, 5 pages long. And for reference, a P&L sheet should not be that long most of the time. So restaurant owners, they just constantly feel like they have to micromanage because they have to do that in their restaurant. So you're going to come with a micro leader like that. You just have to help them understand that you've got it, but also meet them with logic. So again, just understanding the different types of clients that you'll have and then customize the process for them along the journey. So for example, like we talked about, right, is between the onboarding and the setup phase, those 2 weeks, if you have somebody who is an executor, I don't need to check in with them every day. Like there's no need for that. They're good. Like they understand the process. They trust it. Maybe I can push it to every 2 days or maybe even every 3 days. But with someone who's fear driven, I will have to check in with them like every day and then push it to every 2 days eventually. With a micro leader, it's possible that they might even be messaging me on a daily basis, just trying to figure out what's going on. So just understanding the different types of clients and how that might affect the way they go through your process and how you can customize it further. Does that make sense on ideal client personas, profiles, or avatars? All the same. Yeah. All right. Cool. I know we're over a little bit, so I appreciate you guys for hanging in there. Last thing is really just testing, tweaking, and optimizing, because obviously it's never going to be perfect, whether it be the actual process itself, like the logistical part, or these processes, the operations, or your client success journey, right? The peaks and valleys that you drew up, maybe they're not as accurate, and you just have to make some adjustments. And it is what it is. It's just part of the process. And Yeah, here we go into Q&A, but we did do a Q&A earlier, which is completely fine. But does anybody have any questions that they want to go over before we wrap up? I know we're a little bit over here. And I'll just go back to Rifa because I know you had a question. Did you want to go through that one?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a question, it was more a thought. What you guys were sharing actually kind of spurred up another idea when it comes to case studies. So I actually realized, I guess if we go down the route of not being very specific to real estate, so I'm in the mortgage space, real estate, I run a marketing team. So I have like case studies from what I've done for the company over the last 10 years. So I was like, I wasn't even thinking about that, honestly, but I was like, I could totally use that, I guess, the different types of services. So it doesn't matter, like paid ad, social, SEO, website, whatever. So
Yeah.
the conversation helped, and I guess that makes sense, right? It doesn't have to, because it was through other agencies that I managed. So
Yeah, but you were part of that, right? So typically the way we do it is we work our way, we start inside and we work our way out. So we go with your personal experience. And again, even if you weren't the agency owner doing certain things, if you worked in marketing, like you just said, that's exactly, that's part of your experience. You understand what it takes and you understand what it looks like. You understand the scope. So that is part of it that you can leverage. And then you just start to work your way out. So then that's why I mentioned contractors and their case studies and then just working your way out. So, but yes, and that's actually something. So I know I just brought up Adam working with restaurants. So he flew in and he talked to us about his offer. And the thing that we found with him was he has over 20 years of experience in restaurants, where he used to be, I don't think he was a dishwasher, but he was a line cook. So working from there all the way up to becoming the head chef, to then eventually helping in more of like an operational side and becoming a partner to open up restaurants. So that's one thing that he's able to leverage, even though his marketing agency is new, just like you, Rifat, but he's got the experience, 20 years of working in restaurants, from inside the kitchen to then managing the business and opening up new locations for the companies that he worked with. So even though it wasn't with the agency, he's got that experience that we're leveraging very heavily in his offer. So yes, it completely makes sense. And I would highly leverage that because again, it's part of your experience and it's you as the owner.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah,
And
that
then,
helped.
awesome. And then Monica, I know you unmuted. Did you have something to add or question?
I just had a thought to add on the end about when you're thinking about your client personas. Remember that you're typically going to sell how you prefer to be sold to. And if you stick to that, then you're going to not appeal to everybody. You're going to sanction yourself off because you're only going to sell to people that are like-minded. So it's important that you gauge and read those personalities when you're tailoring your sales pitch to someone, because you don't want to close a door that you may not have intended to close.
I think that's a really great point, especially when it comes on calls. And I know we're having that conversation on sales with Jordan with your question that you had asked. So that's really great. And understanding how people think, again, very important, not just on marketing, but also sales, is we tend to gravitate and go towards people who are like us, whether physically or emotionally or mentally. So mirroring is a really great thing. And, just being able to understand who it is on the other side. So naturally, I'm sure you guys realize that I'm a pretty fast speaker. So back when I used to take calls, as the slower speakers, I would lose them very quickly as far as rapport, because they're like, dude, what is this guy talking about? He's going so fast. So naturally, sometimes I try to slow myself down, and I consciously did that a couple times here on this call. So hopefully I didn't do too bad, but being able to slow down and just speak at their language. If I've got somebody more from the South and they're talking like this, they're not going to be really good with me speaking like this, and I'm going super fast and I'm trying to, like it's going to break that. So being able to, like Monica said, like being able to just understand who is on the other end of you. And just, you'll pick things up naturally, right? Your first call is not going to be perfect, but as you go along, get more experience, you'll understand the different types of people and how to best mirror them. And sometimes it's not even like, speed of how you speak, but it's just certain ways that, like, they might show you on the call what's more important to them. Like for Jordan, that guy came straight on, he was like a numbers guy, but you also don't want to completely give up the control, right? You want to maintain that frame and that control on the call. But obviously, it seems like he's more of a logical individual versus emotional. You don't need to necessarily hit too deep on, like, so man, if your business doesn't succeed, like, what is that going to do for your family? Like, that's the type of guy will be like, let's not talk about that, like, because he just doesn't care. And we've had some people in Launch My Agency, the onboarding form that you guys fill out, some people, they just skip that question. And then we understand that they are more of a just logical individual. They just don't, whether they're not in touch with the emotional side or they're just more logical naturally, completely fine. But just understanding that there are different types of people out there, and communication is really important. Presentation of whatever it is that you're speaking and how you deliver it is also important, from sales to marketing to even client success. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. All right.
stuff.
Love it. Good stuff. Great Q&A here. Great questions and answers.
This turned out to be a really good meeting, I think.
Yeah.
Everybody's participating, so it's good.
Love it. Perfect. All right. Any final questions before we hop off and end? No?
Oh, well, a question, Christian. Would you be able to look at my stuff that I sent? Would you be able to critique my videos? Because I sent like a couple to you and Zarar. Would you be able to like look at my videos and like tell me how I can improve?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. We'll take a look. I'll make sure I send over a message to Zarar to get some eyes on it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so the thing is too, when you guys send in call recordings, it could be myself, it could be Zarar, it could be somebody on our sales team, or I know Zarar's talked about like the sales management team that we have. It might be somebody from there. So like we have a lot of options of quality call reviews. And it's possible if you do want a call review, like if you're okay with it, we can even bring it up on a call like this. Obviously, we're not gonna take your call from here and wait till next week. Like we'll give you a review beforehand. But like if, for example, if on a Wednesday you send it in, you're like, can we review it on a Thursday call? We can probably adjust the topic of the day. So,
Oh, that would
anyways,
be. I think that would be cool. I think that'd be cool to like have like look at each other, or if it's okay with everybody, review look at each other's calls and get feedback or get some inspiration of what to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm trying to like learn. That's my mission, to learn to get better, because I know I could improve.
Love it. Yeah. No, Jordan, you're crushing it, dude. Jordan, you're crushing it.
Thank you. I'm trying, man. I'm just not I guess to my detriment at times. I don't quit easily at stuff. Even if I suck, I want to keep going. I don't know. It could be a good and bad thing, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's an interesting line because obviously we don't want to quit, and if there is potential and it's just getting a little hard, that's one thing. Now, if another thing is like if it's literally impossible, then that's different. Like or like meaning like if you need a pivot versus just try something new, you know what I mean? Like a different angle and whatever you're trying to get at, that's different versus what, let's pivot and do something completely different. So, but understanding that is also a very difficult skill. Being able to recognize when is it time to move on to something else and pivot versus what if I just try a slightly different angle or something slightly different and just still get to my goal and achieve it. But yeah, I think you're doing great. And if there's no more questions, I will drop this link in the marketing channel. Just give me a few minutes afterwards. And as always, if you guys have any questions or need anything, just reach out in those channels with myself or Zarar. Tag us, tag your agency advisor. Please utilize us. I got to hit on that hard. Like just utilize the team. Everybody's here for you for a reason. So leverage them. And believe me, because this sometimes comes up, is like you guys will never annoy us. Believe me, it takes a lot. So we're here for you guys.
Right. Awesome.
Ready for you guys to provide value. And yeah, everybody have a great day and we'll see you guys soon.
All right. Bye, everybody.